Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to go over the new EX augment combinations that we now have access to that have been kind of added into the mix, since we'll be basically refarming our combinations, since they essentially buffed all of the EX augments, at least their base potency percentage, and they added in, what, five new EX augments into the mix. So I wanted to talk about the different combinations, how they have changed some things up, and what we can look forward to farming, just in case you're not 100% sure what you should be looking out for, whether it be to sell it or to use it, or how it actually works. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, as always, my name is Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2. Would much appreciate to subscribe as we work our way towards that 10K mark, hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. All right, so we're gonna actually pop over to my Discord to start with, because it's a little bit of a Discord plug. But in case you were like, I don't know what to use, what should I do, so on and so forth. Well, in our Discord, just scroll on down. We have this useful little we have this game resources chat, which is going to be filled with other game resources as well. Should add Monster Hunter to this, actually. But in the PSO2 section, or the PSO2 resources, you can find, if you go up to general information, there is information about different things. And included in that is the EX combo list. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is this EX combo list. Now, in case you're curious how this actually works, what this is, basically this gives you all the information about the base potency of the EX augment, as well the bonus potency that it gains whenever it's active, if it has any bonus potency in the first place, essentially. There's a lot of really interesting EX augments combination combos overall, and we're going to talk about some of the new ones that were added in. We're going to talk about the old ones. We've talked about the old ones beforehand, so feel free to check out that video. And I don't want to spend too much time going over all of this. Basically, we're just going to go over some of the newer stuff, but I have been looking at EX augment combinations way too freaking long as it is. So let's go ahead and just get this sorted out. So we have 5 new EX augment combinations. We have Consume PP Onslaught, Shortage PP Preservation, we have Critical Enliven, Critical Flow, and Tri-Shield Follow. So they work as follows. The Consume PP Onslaught increases the amount of PP that you use. However, you also get increase plus 1% PP. So if you're staying below, sorry, plus 1% potency. So if you're staying below 50% PP, you get an increase of 1% potency, but you also drain more PP as you use it. So it's a little difficult to kind of like maintain this. I don't know what class can utilize this really well at the moment, just because, I mean, you're gonna be low on PP most of the time, and you're gonna have to juggle the amount of PP that you actually have, so it can be kind of a bit of a pain, but that's how it currently works at the moment. Moving on, we have Shortage PP Preservation. This is kind of like the inverse of Consume PP Onslaught. When you are lower than 50% PP, it reduces your PP consumption for 20 seconds, has a 10-second cooldown. Now, I don't know if this refreshes the entire time that you're below, or if it's like it procs once for 10, or it procs once and then it'll proc again. But based on my testing of other EX augments, my assumption is that as long as you were lower than 20%, it'll proc, and then it'll go for the 20 seconds, then it'll have 10 seconds of a cooldown, and it'll do it. It'll go again. So that's kind of how I assume it works. Not 100% sure on that. Feel free to test it yourself. Totally up to you. We have Tri-Shield Follow. So Tri-Shield Follow, in game, if you've looked at this, it's currently got a weird like translation issue. It says it reduces it by, what it means is it reduces it to. So what happens is this actually reduces the EX Tri-Shield's cooldown from 120 seconds to 190 seconds. So it doesn't reduce it by 90 seconds, it reduces it to 90 seconds. Yeah, it's actually, I didn't hear mistranslation of cooldown. So you can see it very, very clearly right here. It does reduce it to 90 seconds. So this is pretty solid. If you're using something like, let's say, Lively HP and Tri-Shield, you can have Tri-Shield Follow to reduce the shorted, or the cooldown a bit, not by a lot, but a bit of the downtime of Tri-Shield, since Tri-Shield's cooldown doesn't start until you use all 3 shields, meaning you can't kind of like loop it or anything like that with good play, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. No big deal there. And then we have the last 2. We have Critical Enliven and Critical Follow, and this is the one that's caused me to take the most time testing, just because of how it actually works. So Critical Enliven gives you 1% potency for 30 seconds after a crit with a normal attack. Now, Critical Follow gives us a follow-up attack upon landing a normal attack. This is counted as a follow-up attack that always crits. Now, this is also coded as a normal attack, meaning that whenever you have Critical Follow with Critical Enliven, the crit from Critical Follow always procs Critical Enliven, and Critical Enliven will reset every time it's procced, meaning if you have the 2 of these together, As long as you do one normal every 30 seconds, this will proc. Now, here's the kicker here. This will cost the most testing for us. What denotes a normal attack? What does and doesn't work? We have an entire sheet for this that I'm going to include in the video description, whether it's in the description or it's in a pinned comment, like a note that you guys can pull up. But there's some amazing notes that my mod Shade took that I'm going to go ahead and pull up here for you guys. That way you can see them, because holy freaking crap, it is not as simple as it looks. All right, it's time to leak the DMs, boys. We got them. We got them. Anyway, so this will be included as like a text file, maybe in the video, maybe in the video description, maybe as a pinned comment, whatever. I'll figure out a way to have this included. But this is kind of like just the rules behind how this actually works. So baseline rules for this EX augment is enliven will refresh every single time you get that crit on the either a crit normal or the crit follow normal. It refreshes. So let's say, for example, you attack once with a normal, you get the buff. The buff is up for 30 seconds. If you get another normal within that 30-second timer, the timer resets. That's just about as straightforward as it gets, basically. Swapping weapons deletes it. Now, even if you swap to another weapon that is the exact same type of weapon, that is the exact same weapon with a different set of EX augments that also has enliven on it, it will still remove the buff. So you cannot have an offhand weapon that has enliven and the follow-up on it, and then have another main hand weapon that just has enliven on it. That way you can use other EX augment combinations. It will delete the buff. It does not carry over. I know some people are like, oh, well, this is pretty normal, but that's not always the case. Different skills work different ways. For example, I know the tri-shield one actually does work. In this case, it does not. So, and then of course there are like potentials that also do the same thing. Skills that skip to a different point in normal attack chain do work. Skip arts work, even specialized normal attacks that happen. We're talking backhand smash that gives you, you know, the different normal. If you use the sway on knuckles, you get a different normal. That works. As long as it skips you to a normal attack, it will work. That normal will proc it. And all impact skills are considered normal attacks to proc the follow-up. So the follow-up will proc every single time you use an impact skill. That's rifle impact. That's all of the impact skills. Anything that's an impact skill will work. It's notably, rifle doesn't work if you hold the normal. It's just when you initially press it. That is the only time that it works. Any time that you have to hold the normal for continued shot. So for example, with rifle impact, it's not that good. It's doable, but not great. The weapon specific situations we can kind of talk about here. So with soaring blades, doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Nothing works other than the standard normals. So no dash normals, no step counters, none of that stuff works at all. Which is good, because if it worked with step counters, we'd be back to bapsing all over the place and it'd be very painful. For jet boots, skip beat attacks will work. However, the tech chase normal does not work. And you're probably thinking, but streamer, you just said it's only normal attacks. Of course, the tech chase normal doesn't work. You'd be surprised. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. For gunblade, charge normal works. Slug and relentless are not considered normal attacks to proc the follow-up, meaning that will not work. So while you can kind of cheese a little bit with charge normals, you can do it that way. You kind of have to go out of your way for that, and it's not that powerful that I would recommend it in the first place. For TMGs, chain actually boosts the damage of critical follow. So it does get the damage buff from chain trigger, which is hilarious. However, nothing else works. Only normal attacks work, and that's it. So it's pretty sad, but it is what it is. Knuckles backhand smash, talked about it. The TAC type 2 that gives you that special follow-up after backhand smash does work. Any of the skip arts also works. Any of the same arts also work. If it skips you to a normal attack, it works. Sword Avenger normal attack follow-up works. Wire Lance, no special specific interactions, just the skip arts as usual. Wand, the tech chase normal attack does work for Wand. It doesn't work on jet boots, but it does for Wand. That's kind of funny. Wand Lovers does not buff the damage of critical follow-up, so even though it's based on your normal attack damage, it doesn't buff it. However, Shifta does buff it. So anything that's kind of like a global buff does seem to work on critical follow-up. Rifle needs to have normal attacks / impact. Yep, that we talked about that already. And then it follows the impact rule as per normal. Launcher has no specific interactions whatsoever. Doesn't work with anything realistically speaking. It's not really that great. Bow's impact do work. So bow impact does work. It does seem to be pretty powerful. So something to keep in mind if you want to go for bow. And that's pretty much it. If it's not in this list, assume all of the things we just mentioned follow. So if it's not here, assume the baseline rules apply and work to those. Feel free to test them yourselves as far as that process goes. However, what does this all mean? Well, it means that if you have a normal that fits into your normal like attack string, it's not a bad idea to use the critical enliven follow-up combo, depending upon how much that normal fits into your usual string. If you're having to go out of your way for it, it doesn't really feel like it's all that much worth it. And you can see that there's not really a lot of situations where you're going to go for this. So you can actually take a look at the different combos. So the way this tab works is essentially it's the baseline 2 combos with how good a third option is. Usually a lot of the conditional based EX augments, you want to kind of go with a combo, basically one that procs the other, and then you want to go with a solid third option. And as you can see, critical enliven is very high up there. It's actually an S++ option. The problem here is that there are better choices is the first one. And second, you have to actually tend to press normal. So if you're a class that already presses normal, you don't like any of the other options above. For example, let's say you're playing the hysterical strength shortage burn combo. You're not a big fan. You don't really want the defense. Like, you really don't care about the defensive option here. And endure pain PB boost, like, let's say you're not really big on your PB. Let's say you play like soaring blades only. You're using the hysterical strength combo, and you're like, you know what? I'll throw a normal in there every once in a while. It's a pretty solid damage bump. However, big thing to keep in mind here in this situation is that your normal attacks kind of suck on soaring blades. So you have to ask yourself, are you using your normals all that often? Are you in a situation where you're running out of PP that you have to use normals? If you do, then like it could work out, right? Getting critical enliven here could work out, but it's only critical enliven, not critical follow, meaning you have to crit with those normal attacks for it to proc and give you the damage buff to everything else. So it's solid, it's good, but you also have to keep in mind that you want to maintain getting those normal attacks in, or you're not really going to have that damage buff. And that kind of goes across the board here, right? So risky stance, same situation. Risky stance has an option for lively HP. So if you don't like lively HP, this isn't a bad choice here. This is a defensive option, but again, it's defensive. If you want to go offensive, you have different choices, right? If we go further down, tri-shield and lively HP critical enliven kind of just works as a good option for them specifically because you already have lively HP, already have tri-shield, but tri-shield follow, not a terrible option. Honestly, bring down is kind of what I would recommend more of in this situation. Even for this combination, I'd recommend bring down. It's kind of crazy to me that bring down is so low on their list. Bring down's pretty fucking powerful, so teach their own, I suppose, but like it's one of the situations where this is actually pretty solid damage. So maintain balance, again, turnover, I don't really like it all that much, but critical enliven, here it is, it's back again, pretty solid. Critical enliven comes up in the turnover of 8 HP combo because it's pretty solid, but of course you have lively HP Starling. But if you have issues with keeping your HP up, it makes sense that you would want to go ahead and go with something else. Bring down with lively HP, just the raw damage combo option as long as you can actually get the target downed. Turnover is of course the best option here, assuming you can proc turnover. That's why there's an asterisk. Critical enliven is just solid overall. And then if you look at the critical combo, this is the normals combo. Lively HP is kind of what you go for here in this situation. And then consume PP onslaught's pretty solid because it can offset the penalty you have of increased PP cost. But again, it's tough to say that I would really want to go after that specifically. I guess the only other EX augment that's kind of interesting in this mix is the consume PP options. Consume PP as well as they're PP augments basically, right? They're options for you to deal with PP consumption. Consume PP onslaught's pretty solid. It's extra damage, right? It starts at 550 as a baseline, which is good, and then it gets stronger whenever you're below the PP threshold, right? So even in a worst case scenario, you're still at a baseline that everyone else is at, right? So you can consider having this on even if you're not 100% sure that you'll be able to do enough, like you'll be able to stay in it consistently, because it's going to push you above like the regular amount, right? Like even in the situation of critical critical enliven, right? Being active. When it's not active, it's worse than the baseline. The idea here is you got to keep in mind is if you can keep something active, it's nice to have it. But if there are chances of you dropping it, the baseline, if the baseline is lower than 5.5 in this situation, because it's been brought up now from 4.5, if it's lower than 5.5, then you may want to consider a different option if you're not going to continue to keep it up. So this again was just I wanted to show you guys basically more or less the sheet. You can make these decisions on your own, decide based on your classes. I'm considering messing around with the idea, messing around with the idea of the critical follow situation. I wish that it worked with more things. It kind of sucks that it doesn't. But I mean, my combo is maintain balance shortage HP. I've loved using it for a very long time now. But it's one of those situations where I have to figure out, am I gonna turn to turnover? Am I gonna turn to critical enliven? Because it's, now it's technically a bit more damage. Bring down is pretty solid, but it's one of those situations where it's a bit, it depends on the target if you actually get them down or not. So it's just one of those situations where you have to kind of figure out what you want to go for. All in all, critical enliven, pretty solid. Critical follow, kind of niche. Depends on your situation. Oh, there's one thing I did forget about critical follow that I didn't mention in this. Critical follow does also give you PP regen. So it counts as a normal for PP regen. So in situations where a class does use their normal pretty often, for example, in a situation like I'd say bow, where you are getting quite a few of your impact follow-ups afterwards, and you do have some issues with PP management in some situations, it might be pretty solid to use something like critical follow-up along with critical enliven for bow specifically in that case. I'm not sure that that's exactly what I would go for, or if that's actually going to be good or not. Just because like you need to have a good third option, and like your good third option basically is only lively. And then like maybe consume PP onslaught. I don't know. It's a tough call, man. I'm not 100% sure how you would have actually worked that out. I wish this was a lot like more interesting than it was. If this worked with basically if this worked with everything that counted as normal attack damage, this would be a way cooler augment combination, but unfortunately that's just not the case. I was hoping it would. There are a lot of attacks that count as normal attack damage that just aren't normal attacks that this doesn't work for. So kind of a bit of a bummer, but what can you do? Anyway, if there's anything I missed, feel free to toss in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video, sub if you want to keep up with more. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic, and I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, my friends. Peace out.